Great. Thanks, Jesse. Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Keenan. Jessica Chait and I are the co-chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee, which usually meets monthly, and this is our July meeting. We'll maybe do this preamble a couple more times and then be able to not do it anymore. But for now, actually, yeah. As per the mayor, the COVID-19 emergency order has not been extended. Here's what that means for us. This committee meeting and all community board committee meetings will require an in-person quorum to conduct business. Tonight, we're not voting on anything, we're just discussing. So I think we can get around that. Members are expected to attend meetings in person unless you have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance. If that's the case, please let Jesse, Jessica, or myself know in advance of the meeting. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet in a live and a virtual hybrid fashion. So excused committee members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. We ask that committee members who are joining via Zoom leave their cameras on and are required to do so when speaking or voting. We encourage members of the public to join virtually. A copy of the MCB4 hybrid policy is available on our website. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube, where it will remain accessible until the end of days. The agenda for tonight is public and can be viewed on the CB4 website. We encourage everyone to sign up for our e-blasts to get the agenda. If this is your first time at a CB4 meeting, here are some things to know about the process. I'm not sure anyone's actually here, but first, after each presentation, the committee will ask questions to the presenter. Then members of the public can ask questions or make a comment. Subsequently, the discussion goes back to the committee. On some agenda items, committee members may next vote to make a recommendation, which usually results in a letter for the full board to vote on. If you'd like to comment or ask a question after a presentation and after the committee has spoken, you must press the raised hand button on your screen and we will call on you to unmute. If anyone has any questions about what I just said, don't think so. So I think that first, I just want to thank Jessica for going to be the person in person tonight, and everyone who showed up and everyone who showed up anyway, because I know this is a bit of a vague agenda tonight, and it's really probably more of a conversation than anything else, just to introduce our new members and to meet and talk about a lot of the things that we have coming up and going on, which we are a very busy committee. So with that, I would like to ask Gregory first and then Rodney to introduce themselves to the committee and tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you chose Chelsea Land Use. And yeah, it's great to have you here. And yeah, we'd love to just hear something about you.
All right. Hi, thank you. My name is Greg Morris. I'm the CEO of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition. And which is a 220 plus member organization that's focused on helping New Yorkers find jobs. And one of our primary locations, and part of the reason why I got to be part of this particular community board, is because one of our primary locations is Hudson Kills. I have history on the community board on the Upper East Side, where I was part of the Stanley Isaacs neighborhood houses and the Stanley Homes land use conversation about development. So because of that history and that connection, I wasn't just excited to be part of this community board with this new opportunity, but also this particular committee is something that I have some, I don't want to say familiarity, but I've certainly been in environments where these conversations, I think some of the conversations you're having are going to be somewhat familiar. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. So again, my name is Rodney Washington, and I'm excited to join the Community Board 4, and especially excited to join the Chelsea Land Use. I've lived in Chelsea for almost 13 years. October will make 13 years. I'm at 28th and 10th Avenue. My professional background is pretty broad and diverse. However, most of it is in public service, working with vulnerable populations in the US and abroad, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, doing international development work. However, I've also done some work readiness stuff across the New York City as well. But again, I'm excited to join this, especially the Chelsea land use, because I live in Chelsea, directly across the street from Chelsea Park, and on the backside is the High Line, and I can see Hudson Hill from my window.
How about Alaska?
If I go to the rooftop. But thank you.
Yeah, I'll quickly just jump in and say, I don't think we're gonna necessarily, Carrie, do you wanna go around and have everyone introduce themselves?
No, I don't think so. I mean.
So hopefully lots of time. I think there's a scheduled social for MCB4 next Thursday, and so usually, hopefully, I won't be rushing to set up the room like I was today, sorry about that. But, you know, time before meetings, at the social, we don't do business over email, committee business, but hopefully we'll all find time to get to know each other and work together and find areas that you can bring your unique perspective and expertise, certainly in the meeting, of course, but also personally. My professional work has a lot of overlap, so I look forward to speaking to both of you. So that's great. Back to you, Ken.
I think my bit's over and we can just start by, many people were in attendance last week at the presentation from NYCHA and Essence and Related. I'm not sure Related was actually there, but the proposal for Chelsea Elliott and Fulton Houses redevelopment. So we definitely see that as a top priority on our agenda moving forward. I know that some people weren't there, and we apologize for not having their presentation to share with you tonight. Jesse's going to say something about that, or it's in the Dropbox, or
I just literally got it in the Dropbox delivered to me at
Okay.
6:37.
Yeah.
So it is in the Dropbox. So you all have it. It's on the Dropbox link.
Thank you. So, we apologize for that. We really did our very best to get that in the Dropbox with enough time for people who couldn't attend to be able to at least review what was presented to the public at the public meeting. Obviously, we don't expect anyone who didn't see it to have been able to read it in the last 60 seconds. So maybe we just talk about it, and I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to sort of lead this discussion. We have only been, Chelsea land use has only been, shown what everyone else has been shown. So we've had no opportunity yet to have any private or deeper conversations than what was presented at the public meeting. So we have a lot of questions, and we think that maybe it would be fruitful to talk about, hear from everybody, what their questions might be, put together a list and send it back to NYCHA and Essence, particularly around land use issues, because there will be a ULURP, and it is a big land action. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Yeah, just a few other framing pieces, and then we'll open it up. And actually today, just take a little step back. This meeting, as we kind of noted, is not really a traditional meeting. Typically, we do have people from the outside presenting on topic and then voting and a letter. We could have easily canceled this meeting, but we frankly didn't want to, and we appreciate that you all showed up to just have this space to discuss and certainly to welcome you all. But I do want to note that this meeting is a little more unique and frankly more informal in that way. So we want to hear from everyone. The other things on NYCHA in particular that I wanted to note is that there's clearly, like, we're talking about housing development, and then we're also talking about a land use action. And so this will, and we're talking about a huge two parts of our district and of Chelsea in particular. And so this will be addressed by both the housing committee and the Chelsea land use committee. And we often have issues that we are working on together, but certainly this will be a very significant one. And not only will it be, but it has been. Betty and Mike from this committee and Hector as well, and others on the housing committee have been part of a working group that concluded its work just at the beginning of the pandemic But we're really trying to bring the voices and experience and perspectives of community board forward. Were you on that committee? No. I'll make sure that you
It's going to be so much.
It was initiated.
just share. Okay, I knew you probably had a connection. And so anyway, just that there's a lot, this is not a new topic. There's a lot of history, a lot of momentum on this, and also a lot of uncertainty, as Carrie said. There are several proposals that are still being explored. And I want to speak for Mike and Hector, but we also really value their unique perspective as residents of these two complexes, and have the personal experience both of living there, but also seeing how the process is playing out from a tenant perspective, and that's really valuable as we think about this whole thing, in its totality. But as it relates to our committee, we're most focused on the issues of land use, and as Carrie said, if this goes through a ULURP, the opportunity and the importance of really digging in on the issues of land use and how that will affect this district going forward. So the other thing I want to mention is we are hoping, Jeffrey has been asking Essence and NYCHA to come to a CLU meeting in September. So this is, again, not the beginning, but another stop in the conversation, but we will have an opportunity to address our concerns and our questions, and hopefully also have more people from the public joining us in those conversations. I noticed Miguel actually just joined us as an attendee, and Miguel is the tenant leader and has been very involved. I guess we can pause, but I just want to say that we wanted to put this out there to hear if there are questions, concerns, ideas, so that we can, as we move forward in this process, be sure to incorporate those along the way. And yeah, Carrie.
Thanks. Not to be redundant, but we, in the week that we've been able to see anything for these potential proposals, we have been asking for more information. So I think that Jessica and I both felt that putting together this list of questions might just facilitate that. And, we'd be able to get all of the information that we want, hopefully with plenty of time to spare for our September presentation. And that will just kind of help us keep moving the ball forward as quickly as we have heard that everybody wants us to. Jesse?
I just wanted to also highlight with something like this, it's going to require an environmental impact statement. And historically, land use committees have chimed in on those as well. And Betty knows this for sure. So I think you guys will be beginning that process probably in the fall with, looking at that and looking at what the scope is and seeing if we think it should include more review and study of certain aspects, whether it be light and air, shadow, park space, impact on transportation, anything of that nature. So that's sort of the first initial steps that you as a land use committee can do. Because if it doesn't get into the scope, as some of us know, then we can't complain about it later. Because then they're going to say, well, that's out of scope. So I think it's a really good way of first really kind of looking at what the major issues are going to be about, and making sure that they're going to be reviewing them in their environmental impact statement.
Thanks, Jesse. I'm not seeing any jumping here in the room, so we'll go to Betty first and then Paul. Okay, and then we'll go to Paul. And I just also wanted to acknowledge, this is only our second meeting in hybrid. We're so lucky to have this great room and setup. We're definitely learning how to manage the flow back and forth. So indicate when you're ready to speak, and Karen and I will do our best to call on folks. We noticed at the last meeting, it got a little hard for people to figure out where they could break in. So just appreciate your patience on that, Dr. Paul. But we'll start with Betty and then we'll come back and be here in the room. Betty.
Well, I could say a lot of things about this. Just as for starters, that I think people who are not familiar with this at all must know that this is a monumental proposal, and it's unprecedented that the developer and housing authority are proposing to demolish all the buildings as part of these two campuses. And it's not ever been done in the city. And when I was thinking about it, it might be useful to put in our Dropbox or wherever some articles. There's been another number of articles in the New York Times, in the local Chelsea newspaper, that could help give newcomers to this topic some, perspective in what is being proposed. But since I've seen their PowerPoint or whatever it is twice, I think we should ask for some things that will really help us understand it better. And some of those things would be a total list of ULURP items and actions that we would expect going forward. Rezoning, some kind of waivers, special permits, you name it. We should know the whole list, and we should have, if necessary, graphics that show where these ULURP actions are needed. And then I also think, in terms of people understanding this, that the buildings they're proposing, the new buildings, are 36 and 38 stories high. Try to picture that in terms of the context of lower scale Chelsea, Penn South, and so on. So Penn South is 21 stories. So I think that their graphics should show how many stories these buildings are. We just show a graphic that is like the footprint of each. And that's a good start, because they were saying, well, this building would be torn down, and then this building will open, and these people will move over to live in the new building. But in terms of the actual physical entity, that doesn't give it to me. That they need to have like sectionals or block diagrams showing here are these buildings, and eventually they'll have shadows. But anyway, I think that would really be helpful to understand the impact on this. And I don't think they should get away with saying, well, we'll show that in the EIS. They need to give us more information up front. And I won't talk too much longer, but I think that they haven't clarified the amenities, such as playgrounds and outdoor space. There's a basketball court on the avenue. Is that being demolished, and will there be another basketball court? Will there be another playground? I think they need to really show that, and a community space, community rooms, that kind of thing. I think it would also be good, which I said the other night, they gave an information package to the residents of the buildings there, and I think we should get that to see what they said to the residents of the buildings. There seems to be a little murkiness about the survey that they administered to the residents, and it would be useful to know how many people live in these campuses and how many replied and what the percent was for or against or don't know. And so I think the last thing I'll just say is that they played this very close to the vest, shall we say, and haven't shared much with anyone else but the developers and the residents, which I can understand. The residents want to understand it first, but there's a large community surrounding these two campuses, particularly Penn South, and somehow maybe we have to encourage the larger community to get involved or come to information meetings. But I think otherwise down the road, we're going to have people who don't understand the project and then oppose it for lack of information. So that's, I'll hush up now.
Thank you, Betty. That's all great. And maybe especially for our new members, you'll come to learn that unless Betty requests a map, she's not done with her request. So I'm so glad you got that in there.
A reference.
Yeah, she requested a map. I heard it. So we're gonna go to Paul and then we'll go back. Sorry for the back and forth, but,
And then the
and then, yeah, we'll go. For
Thanks. Betty, as always, great suggestions. I wanted to follow up on two of your points there. I would make sure we have the essence reach out to Pensall and to London Terrace. That's another major community that's going to be that will be impacted by this and will have something to say. And then in terms of your comments about the survey, I seem to recall from the presentation that they talked about the number of leaseholders that participated in the survey, and you used the term residents. And so I think we should have a distinction between the number of residents of the two campuses versus the number of leaseholders in the two campuses, and then how many people actually were contacted, right? And leaseholders, it seems to me, were given the opportunity to participate in the survey, but not all residents necessarily were, which may be fine, but I think we should understand what that distinction is. The one thing I remember looking at from the survey, from the presentation, was that they had an as-right proposal and then a proposal with a rezoning. They had, Betty, they did have numbers of stories on the imagery, but it didn't necessarily convey in an image the way it should. But I'd really want more clarification on what is it that they could do by right by zoning, and then what is it that they're asking for in a rezoning, and what specifically does that translate to in terms of number of units, both. I mean, I think the NYCHA units will stay the same, but they're adding more affordable units to the community and market rate units to the community. What are those numbers? I never saw what the increased number of housing units is for Chelsea. And I think it's a good thing to add housing units, and I think it's a good thing to add market rate units. I think it's a good thing to add affordable units, but it weren't clear on what they were offering. And then with
Paul,
that,
can I jump in real quick? And because I have an answer to that, and I'm taking notes here, so I want to make sure I understand your question about, sorry for interrupting, but you asked that Essence reach out to Penn South and London Terrace. And what would they be, asking them, just so I have these notes correct? Like what is the, sorry.
Are you asking me or Paul?
Paul.
so I would make a presentation of what they're doing to give them the information, much like they're giving to NYCHA residents and giving to us. I think Betty's asking that they do the same for Penn South, and Betty asked that during the presentation, that Penn South is just informed about what's going on, that's all.
Okay,
So that
and for the numbers, this is what I have written down from their presentation. There are 2,056 households existing. They're going to add 1,042 new affordable and 2,400 mixed income / market rate. They did not clarify, the bands or how many market rates. So it's an additional 3,500 units.
Sure. Yeah, in terms of the mix itself, I think that's for housing to tackle, not us necessarily. But is that 3,500 approximate new units? Is that from the rezoning or is that by right zoning?
I don't know.
That's where I want clarification, Harry, is the distinction between what would be allowed under current zoning and then what are they proposing under the rezoning? Because that 3,400 may be just through the rezoning. And so I just want clarity on that. And also then that goes to my next question on Jesse raises EIS process in SECRA. I know that once you add a certain number of households, an EIS triggers other analyses like number of school seats that we'll need, right? So if they're going to add 3,500 housing units, that means there's likely going to have to be a school built. So who's building that school?
I thought that was in the.
No, we did bring that up at our first meeting when we, saw the initial presentation, which was the day before the public meeting. And they alluded to the fact that would be in the EIS. So it's an excellent question. And I think there are other questions surrounding that from an infrastructure perspective for the neighborhood. So we'll definitely include that.
But that, and so that, Carrie, goes back to my question, of if they do it by right, they may not get this 35 additional units, it may not trigger a school. If they do a rezoning that triggers this many more additional units, that may trigger a new school. So I want to have clarity on what direction that's going, because if they're going to build 3,500 new units and they're going to have to build a school, does that school go on the NYCHA campus? Where does it go? Right? Like, we can't just say, oh, we'll put a school someplace else, because that has ramifications. So I want a little more clarity on that. And, you know, it sort of echoes Betty's point about like, how tall are these buildings going to be and all that. But then my third question is on the impact on the historic districts nearby, right? Like, we're going to have 36-story towers. We've always tried to make sure to protect the historic districts. And although we don't have formal shadow requirements and light and air requirements on adjacent properties, I'd want to know, I mean, I think that if you touch a historic district, you have certain restrictions, but if you're a block from a historic district, you have nothing.
No, you know, you're right.
Right, so if we're a block away from a historic district and we're putting up 36-story towers, I'm gonna wanna know what the shadow implications are on the historic
Well,
homes.
they're proposing, I'm just thinking the image, they're proposing, sorry, to interrupt, but redoing the park on 19 and 9, which is,
Where you used to go around the corner.
right,
Yeah.
but immediately,
Right about in the district.
exactly, like literally,
Yeah.
allowing the district.
So there.
It will impact 20.
So that raises an interesting question, is if they're going to do park renovation, is that part of their overall plan, such that now they're adjacent to the historic district, such that historic district restrictions go into the entirety of the campus, right? Like that's
The
a
entirety.
that's a funky line.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we need some clarity on that and how the historic districts are going to be impacted by these taller towers. So those are questions I had that I didn't feel like were answered in the presentation.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we're gonna do Bert and then we'll go to Hector and Mike.
Building on both what Betty and Paul had said, I would not just provide information to Penn South and London Terrace. All the other community organizations, the block
Of
associations,
course, I totally agree.
the block associations, the 200, the 400, whatever they, and then there's the overall Council of Chelsea Block Association. They all should get whatever information is being passed out and divulged, or whatever information and how they're doing it. I would hope they do it live, not just mail something to people, right? A question and answer, that they get involved, that everybody in the community. And you know, all the visualizations of the new building, they're all from above, if I remember correctly. There's no street level. There's no street level. How is it gonna be feeling walking down 25th Street? You know, or up 10th Avenue? And it related to not only the other buildings within the developments, the buildings across the street. Okay, on the south side of 25th Street, of townhouses on the western end of the block. On 10th Avenue, well, you got the school, you got small apartment houses like at 28th Street. I assume that's where you live. Maybe
That is right.
I'm making the wrong assumption, but is that, yeah,
It's 13 floors.
yeah, you know, so we have to know how it relates, not only to each other, but to the rest of the community. Okay. I also would like to know, and maybe they did it, but it just didn't stick with me, the actual phasing. You know, I think they were talking about the Hudson Guild being torn down first.
I'm sorry, Bert, can you just repeat that? The actual
Phasing,
phasing, sorry.
you know, they said it's gonna take, if we do this, it'll be 6 years, if we do the other way, it'll be 8 years, but what is the phasing? And if I recall, they were talking about the first new building would be on the site of where the Hudson Guild is. And I just want to be clear about that. Is it the Hudson Guild they're talking about? Or they're talking about the senior housing right next to the Hudson Guild? guess it would be 27th Street, facing the park.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, and I'm moving backwards in terms of I have some overall, and we have overall issues, that's the word, concerns, issues, that I think we will have to address, because it's gonna keep emerging in any conversation with any group. One, what is the status of this proposal? Is it now officially being proposed by the New York City Housing Authority? Is it being proposed? Is it being endorsed by them? I mean, we did have this guy from housing, and we call him a houser, but he was in housing with him. He's not an old sort of house. He's having more like a real estate. His language. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. He talked about his portfolio. That's what struck me. He mentioned his portfolio. What's his portfolio? Public housing. Why can't you say public housing? Anyway, that's just me. I vented a little bit, sorry. Okay, so I'd like to know what actually is the status. And then moving back from that, we're gonna contend with questions of legitimacy of the survey. It's not a vote, we all know it wasn't a vote. It was a survey, 3 proposals. This, as is, this using current zoning redevelopment, and this with changing. And people were surveyed, well, you know, of course, people ignore, like, I think it was me, Dale, who said, you know, people got it and didn't know what they were looking at, and they threw it away. Yes, and they are also residents. So I'm not sure how to handle that or address that, but there's a question, people, I mean, we hear it on the street. We hear it in any kind of conversation, in any organization in Chelsea right now. They're shoving this down our throat. It really wasn't a vote. It was less than a majority. You know, this is out there. This is out there. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. I think they did have a list of when someone goes from, not someone, the residents of Fulton and Chelsea Elliott who go from Section 9 of the Housing Act, which is public, to Section 8 of the Housing, they will have certain rights. And they listed those rights. I think they have to be in caps and they have to be emphasized. Because people, again, out of ignorance or out of fear or whatever it is, they're saying, oh, after 2 years in the new building, they're gonna ask me what my income is, and they're gonna throw me out. Or my grandmother can't live with me anymore, or, you know, that has to be clear, not just the list, but it has to be emphasized so people know they have information, and because we're also dealing with fear. With fear, and we have to again address that. Okay.
Thank you.
Enough.
I do want to say, and everyone will have a chance to look at the Dropbox on your own time, but there is some detail about the phasing that's proposed. So and it's a lot, so I encourage people to take a look at that timeline in there. Okay, we're gonna.
Can I add one thing? I'm sorry,
Let you know, but I don't have to.
really quick. I just want to echo that a lot of the tone of what we had at the presentation was that this is for NYCHA residents. Their deplorable living conditions need to improve. We support the redevelopment of NYCHA campuses and how we get there. And we want to expedite as much as possible, but we support the efforts to improve their quality of life.
Yeah, and I have a comment on that, but I do want to go to Hector next
Sorry,
first, and then. Yeah, thank you. No, it's important. I think we all agree that it's definitely important to be said. Yes. Hector.
Hi, everybody. Look, bottom line, I keep hearing people throwing around demolition. And yes, that is a part of it. It wasn't originally a part of it, but things have changed. As everybody's knows, the budget has increased astronomically. And this seems to be the only way we can get the funding for this to get this done in a prompt amount of time. Now, this is not a complete demolition. I know everybody's saying demolition, like everything's getting torn down and everybody's getting moved. This is a phased demolition, meaning there's going to be particular buildings, like one on 19th Street, and then yes, the one Hudson Guild and on 26th Street. That's one of the two that's been selected. Okay, it's still open for discussion, obviously, and nothing's set in stone, but those seems to be the ones we're looking at. Now, once the folks are moved out, as we've already communicated to everybody, those folks will be kept in the community. Within Fulton houses, within Elliott Chelsea, there's limited space, but they will be accommodated as best as possible. And then there's guarantees that there will be the overage will be put, the families will be put in the community itself, in the neighborhood. One of them has been sprung up as the Caledonia, and there's another couple locations that are related buildings. And they will be situated there comfortably at no cost of their own, with assistance if they really need it. They'll even have people come in and pack them up if they need the assistance, especially if they're seniors or disabled. So everything, we've looked at everything. We're not just telling everybody, hey, you've got 30 days to move out. We're actually looking at everything, because I myself, I'm going to be at some point have to move out myself. But the difference is these initial families, these initial buildings are making a sacrifice for all of us. So we are bending over backwards to make sure it's as comfortable for them as possible. Okay, whether it be seniors, disabled, families, young kids, whatever. All right, and then what happens is, once those people are situated someplace else in the community, again, not outside, not Queens, not Manhattan, not Bronx, in Chelsea, okay, nearby, then these buildings will be more likely torn down, okay? And then when they're torn down, they'll be built up again to specs. And then these families, within hopefully 2 years, will be moved back in to those new buildings. They will be the first ones in. So there's no displacement whatsoever. Unless, and I know that people are afraid that, oh, I'm going to lose my place, I'm going to get kicked out. Well, the people that are screaming the loudest are not even leaseholders, okay? We have people that are squatting. We have homeless people living in these apartments that have already been escorted several times out by the police and have broken back in to live in there. We have people who are illegally renting their apartments. We have a family down here that are literally renting out apartments here and living in Florida, okay? Living in Florida. And these are the folks, these individuals, and there's some that are doing illegal activities, okay? And also there are violent ones who have issues, who need a lot of therapy and some help. Now, these are the ones that are screaming the loudest, okay? And we also have the outsiders, obviously, who aren't even a part of the community. Now, I know you mentioned that there are no 36-story buildings. Highline 1 over here on 18th Street and 10th Avenue is 36 stories. And no one discussed that with us. No one came to NYCHA and asked us, hey, the tenants here, and say, what do you feel about that? There were no plans laid out. Yes, there were community board 4 meetings, and that's all nice. But as we know, not everybody in NYCHA is aware of these meetings, and they don't attend it. They don't know anything about it. So we also have people in Penn South, okay, that complained that, oh, they weren't notified. Look, they didn't exactly come to the TA leaders, the tenants association either, when they're tearing down the building on 26th Street, where they displaced family-owned businesses like McDonald's and the cleaners that was there, and a Mexican food restaurant and a supermarket that is needed in the community. Okay, they didn't exactly tell us what are you going to do? What are you going to replace it with? We don't have any idea what's going to go there, other than buildings, probably condominiums or co-ops or whatever the case may be. Okay, so for folks to come across to us, but when, I hate to say it, but when the poor folk try to get ahead in life and try to get a better environment for their families to live, okay, now everybody wants to jump out of the woodwork and complain about it and have their 2 cents in. And I get it. This is a big project and it's a big part of the community, and we are part of the community. But I'm really kind of aggravated that people are just going on what's hearsay instead of the actual facts. Now, me, Mike, and other folks who are on the TA or residents here, we do know what's going on, okay? And I would definitely not put my family at risk if I didn't think this was a good idea. So, and I appreciate the due diligence. And yes, there are folks that say we were never notified. The whole process was very thorough. I kid you not, I was a part of that process, making phone calls, knocking on doors, tabling, okay, handing out flyers. And it wasn't just putting on the doorknob. They were slid under the doors if at all possible. So for people to say that, oh, I was not told, is totally, it's BS. Excuse my French, okay? So, and that's what I keep hearing over and over again. And honestly, it's out and out lies. They're playing ignorant because honestly, they're scared. They're scared because this is going to affect the way they live now. Okay, they want to live like they normally do. They play their loud music. They play, you know, they smoke their weed. They deal to whatever they're doing. You know, they have 20 people living in one apartment. Half of them probably aren't even on a lease. All sorts of activities are going on, and this is going to affect the way they live now. Okay, moving forward. Okay, but I don't see this happening in other communities like Penn South or London Terrace and all these other communities here. Okay, so I mean, that's my, and honestly, the survey, I want to explain something to you. Everybody was notified about this survey, okay? We went on the trips, everybody was invited. There was a massive effort to invite everybody to go to look at these communities. And then afterwards, they showed a big exhibition on what the project was being proposed, the 3 projects in detail. Everybody was allowed to ask questions. And this happened several times over the period of 2 months, actually 3 months, excuse me. And then afterwards, they were offered, hey, if you like, here's the survey. You can do it online. We can get your paper ballot. You don't have to do it now. Nobody was strong-armed, okay? If you don't feel comfortable doing it now, do some more research and you could do it later. But it would be nice if you could do it. So everybody had an opportunity to vote on this, okay? So that's my 2 cents. And as a community board 4 member and a resident, a long-term resident of Chelsea, I'm just telling you, this is the way it went. And I understand you have your misgivings and I get it. And our job here is to look out for everybody in the community, not just one neighborhood. Okay. But when you have people on the inside that actually know what's happening and telling you what the real deal is, it's a little aggravating when you hear these people in the background saying, oh, we're getting evicted, they're lies, you know, it's a big mess. So I appreciate all your efforts and I do look forward. And Betty, I appreciate what you're bringing up and bringing to the table. Yes, there are unanswered questions that should be brought up and I'm pushing for all of it to get answered in a timely fashion so everybody can make an educated decision here, okay? And that's the way we handled everything with the tenants here. Okay, and that's the way we will continue to do it. Okay, I'm sorry. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Hector.
As we said, you in particular bring a really important perspective. I do just want to highlight one thing that I think was said earlier is that, you know, this obviously is a very unique situation and has all like the moment the New York Times ran an article, I'm sure many of us got alerts and calls and phone calls. And so there's just a lot of attention on this issue. And so we want to be sure that I think it was Betty who said that, that we garner support even for this so that all of the community doesn't show up on the, at the 11th hour and suddenly take an uninformed position against this for some reason and run with their own New York Times article kind of thing. So I don't think this is just about getting people who don't, like I hear your the perspective you raised, and I'm concerned about having outside voices maybe feels like it has the potential to overwhelm the voices of the residents. And I'm hopeful that that's not the case and rather that it can be voices that join the residents about strengthening the community as a whole and our district as a whole, and hopefully even be a model for other communities, because sadly, NYCHA has a problem across its portfolio. I know you didn't like that language. Portfolio, there are, literally hundreds of thousands, 1 million people who are impacted by the negligent care that NYCHA has provided to so many. So anyway.
Jessica, can I just ask a quick follow-up on Hector's comments before we move to Mike? I appreciate everything you had to say. I just wanted to know, since we're creating a list of questions, and I assume the answer is no, that is there anything that you want to know or to include on this list that you didn't get an answer to, or you'd like to try, to get an answer to, that we might be able to help facilitate that?
That's a naive question, Carrie.
I'm sorry.
Now,
Ted.
really, don't
sorry.
you think, don't you think that we can get this answers to our questions independent of CB4? We are on
Yes,
the
of
committee.
course.
Yes, we are on the committee that is going forward with all of these stages, okay?
Yes,
mean,
I didn't.
but listen, Carrie, let me just stop for a second. I wish that everybody could have been kept aboard as we progressed, okay? It was impossible. The giant committee, the first committee, was a lot of people, and it trickled down, filtered down, and now it's only 10 of us, okay? There's 10 of us from both, combined from both developments, who are handling the, the three committees, and Jamar mentioned them to you. But a lot has gone into each of the meetings, discussions that we've had in those separate meetings, right? Of those committees, those three subcommittees, as it were, but also individual conversations that we've had with Jamar and others. All right, so there's a lot of stuff. I wish you knew it all. And I can just tell you that if you look closely at what's in the Dropbox, I assume what's in the Dropbox is the stuff that I have, okay? It's basically the slideshows, stuff like that. But you got to look at it closely. And I can tell you, there's so many questions that were raised tonight. Bert, everybody has questions. The survey is a big issue, right? Well, let me tell you, I don't know any better survey. It turned out to be a vote. It's not a survey, it's a vote. The people voted, all right? They chose one of these three alternatives, yeah? It was a vote. 60% of those who voted chose new buildings, okay? 60% who voted, it was for the new buildings, not rehabilitation. The people who were given the opportunity to vote were those who were over 18 years old and whose names were on the lease, not the head of household, everybody who was in the apartment and an adult, 18 years or older, okay? 60% of those who did vote, and there's 950 people, I think the number was, which is effectively 30% turnout, right? Greater than any mayoral election in my recent memory. It's a lot of people. Those folks were well aware of what they were voting for by the time that they did. And when Jamar spoke about having CHCP tally these votes and go back to those who submitted ballots one way or the other, there were people who voted two ways, online, on paper, at different times. So they had to go back and actually speak to these people and find out which ballot counts, right? Which one do you really want? That sort of thing. And it took a while. It took, we were expecting a couple of days. It was more like a couple of weeks, as I recall, maybe 3 weeks, So the survey itself, I can tell you, was super comprehensive, understandable, and it gave you everything that you needed to make a decision, as far as I'm concerned. One of the main pages in that presentation, right, was a comparison. How do these three options compare to each other, all right? And that's the page. When anybody came to me and asked me, well, gee, what's this all about? I'd flip it right to that page and I'd say, look here, you see that? You see that? You're worried about getting evicted or something like that, or you're worried about getting left out in the cold, you're going to be moved and not allowed to move back in. All those questions were answered, okay, in that one page. And people changed their minds. They understood that their fear of being, cast out of their apartment was really just the opposite, right? Nobody's, except for a handful of people in the initial stage, everybody moves from their existing place into to the new place, all right? Which is totally unlike other places around the country that have done this before. You know, you got to realize that if NYCHA wants, they meet all of the qualifications to just tear this place down and send everybody off on their own, right? You understand that, right? It's been done elsewhere. And all those places, for the most part, did not have places for people to live again, or for that matter, move directly into. No. There's some horrible examples. This is totally unlike that. You talk about this being unique. Well, yeah, it's unique in that sense, primarily. People are not getting, shoved out of their apartments or out of the community. They're remaining for the entire time that this thing goes forward. And I'd let them understand that. They want some of the people say, well, I want a rehab place. I said, well, and the reason they want the rehab is because we don't want to move out. I said, well, it's only with respect to the rehabs that you will have to move out. You're going to have to move out for 3 weeks for, pipes and all that stuff, lead and asbestos, whatever. Another 3 months for the elevator. Can you imagine such a thing? You're disabled, you're old, or whatever. You live upstairs, no elevator for 3 months. What they're going to have to put in is, those chair lifts, right? You live on the 11th floor, and you come home, and there's a whole group of people in the lobby waiting to get that single chair lift up the stairs to the 11th floor and back down again, that sort of thing. And they didn't understand that. They will have to move twice, perhaps 3 times in a rehab. And then what are you coming back to? You're coming back to the same place, just with a veneer on it. The place cannot be fixed. Behind the walls, there is more there than obviously meets the eye, but there's more there that can be dealt with. You simply cannot gut renovate this place. Won't happen. Can't happen. If this place were, I'm gonna stop, okay? If this place were in its pristine condition, as it was the very day it opened up to the first tenants, okay? If that's what the rehab generated, I wouldn't want to live here. It's antiquated. It's just no good. More than that, let me put another aspect of this into play. When we were doing the first groups, the recommendations and all that, the issue came up about rent caps. It had always been the policy at NYCHA that if your income went above the 30%, right, you would still be capped off at a particular rent that you could make, okay? So you make $200,000 a year, whatever it is. Yeah, that's a lot of money, it's a lot of rent based on 30%, but you would still not have to pay more than, in my case, say $1,875 or something, right? Now HUD has initiated this new thing where if you're over income, right, you're going to pay something, not market rate, but the fair market. It's called fair market rate. And it's a lot of money, a whole lot of money. I would not want to live here. We make that kind of money in my house, just my son and myself. We make that kind of money. I can't conceive of paying that rent in this place in its current condition or rehab. It's just ridiculous, unconscionable. That just one side note. But I mean, in any event, please look at what's in the Dropbox, because there's a lot of stuff in there. You got to look at it closely, and any questions that you might have in these meetings, Hector or I probably know the answer. Probably. Okay. A lot of the questions that you all asked, in the beginning of this meeting, we have the answers to, by the way. All right. some of it has been out there, and I'm kind of surprised that I'm hearing the questions asked. You know, it's like, where were you? Why weren't not you, Carrie? Don't not you. Some of the questions have been asked and answered in public, and you just have to remember
Right,
them.
let's also just remember, maybe not for this meeting, but one, we do have new members of this meeting, and two, that we are always open to the public, and we want to encourage people to ask questions, even if some of us always, there's a lot of on this topic, but in general, I mean, you guys know I'm learning the land use stuff, and like, we have to be in a space where we can feel comfortable to ask those questions, and also know that we have a lot of resources here that can help answer, which I think we can do better to make both available in the context of meetings, and certainly in future meetings as we present these topics. It'll be great to have your and Hector's and others' perspective on these issues, you know, at the start. And that really wasn't the first.
So Jesse, thank you for saying that. Forgive me for being anxious and wanting to jump in, right, all the time. But when we've been going through this for 4 years now, okay? If I happen to know the answer to a question that can be easily answered, I'd like to just pop in and say, oh yeah, well, it's 50% or it's this or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, so you got to forgive me, you got to indulge me on occasion, okay? In that respect. I want to ask another quick question, and then that's it for me, okay? I'll shut up. Right? I spoke to Jeffrey the other day, the day after our public meeting, where I might have ruffled someone's feathers in making a suggestion that the folks might not get a fair share out of a fair shake out of this committee, or the board for that matter. And I told him I wouldn't do that anymore, right? And he said, yeah, you've got to choose between being a board member or a resident and all that. And I said, well, you know, I'm both, you know, I'm both. My question becomes then, once we start actually voting on things in the ULURP process and what have you, am I supposed to, as Hector, supposed to recuse ourselves? You know, do we have to recuse ourselves? Because by definition, every single thing that gets voted upon is going to have an economic impact on us. That's what this whole thing is about. This is the economic survival of our families.
Sure. I think you raised an there. I think we that's something as leaseholder, like, I don't know, I'm sure there's someone who can help advise us on this, and it's not unique to this, it is directly related to this topic, but not unique to this topic. You're not owners of Essence or related. I assume you don't have an investment there, but we'll have to speak with folks and get an opinion.
That's not, Jessica, that's not the standard. You know that, right? That's not the standard.
So, Mike, can I just jump in, Mike? That's on you to decide, and that's for you to figure out, and that's by you contacting the conflict of interest. I can provide you with that information.
Good.
Therefore, when you go forward in your conversations with this on a committee level, that you know that you have a decision made on your behalf to say yes, you can vote on this and not. But besides the vote, you have every right to be part of the conversation and make comment and question be involved. So I think, you know, I can certainly deliver that to you and Hector, who do you would contact, but that'd be you to decide.
Yeah, thanks. And I wanted to get that out there because I know who to contact. I know the deal, okay, and how it works. I just wanted you to say it. So that when I don't recuse myself, you can bet that I've already consulted that entity.
We appreciate that. You're truly, thank you.
So just so you know, I will do this responsibly, all right, legally, yeah. Okay.
We have no, thank you. I do want to put in Miguel, but I see your hand is up. Did you want to
Yeah, I just want to say I apologize for the phrasing of that question, and I understand how that could have seemed insensitive. I think what I was
Yeah.
asking is because you both know so much more than we do at this point, is there anything that we're missing that we might want to include in whatever we send forward to Essence? And I say that, yes, naively, as somebody who does not feel like, you know, I have a ton of information besides what was presented. So I apologize if that seemed pointed in any way other than asking for your help, both of you, Hector and Mike. And we can
Thanks.
circulate these questions and I know that you'll, you know, before we send, of course, and that you'll add whatever you want, you know, or feel is necessary to them.
Yeah, well, I just don't want you to send them a whole set of interrogatories, for God's sakes. If we have the answers already, you know?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm already having been presented to us, right? So I can point you to here, don't ask that, here it is, here's that kind of thing. Don't overwhelm them with questions right off the bat. Otherwise, you know, I want them to be
Right,
helpful.
Mike. I mean, we're on your side, but what we don't think, I think, is that we don't have a lot of information about the actual land action, and that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. I'm curious myself.
Just one more thing. First of all, Miguel, he wanted to jump in if he's allowed to at the point on the public section, if you don't mind. Subjects like this school, there's schools are oversaturated in the area. That's a great question, but why now is it being brought up? And I know it's been brought up a little bit in the past in some other developments, but it hasn't been made like, why aren't you building you're putting the onus of all this. Why aren't you building a school in a community since you're building all these new buildings? When these other buildings have gone up, I've never seen that put on them. That seems a little unfair, don't you think? I mean, it's a great question and it's a great request, and I agree 100%, but it's never been brought up with these other developments really and pushed for.
Well, with Hudson Yards, which is a comparable, Hudson Yards is about I mean, it's not comparable, except for the total number of units that are being discussed, it is comparable, and as part of the environmental, the EIS for that, there were recommendations around school and fire and other things. So that is part of the typical process, but I also hear you that there are other needs and things should not be conflated or an opportunity to weigh this project down so that it can't move forward and just be, we don't want people being opportunistic about what they might want to get out of this project.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, these are valid requests, and I agree 100%, infrastructure, schooling, all that stuff, but it can't be just all dumped on our development and hold things up because, it hasn't been really, I mean, if you combine all the other developments that have been done recently, I mean, honestly, there's been stress on the whole and saturation in the whole neighborhood.
I just want to grab Jesse and then we'll go to Paul and then I saw Betty. And we still have Miguel, so I just wanted to have committee stuff. Jesse.
I was just going to clarify. Anything that the EIS and what it, what the results of that is not a negotiation. It is if it meets a certain standard, it has to create a certain number of school seats. It could not be a school. It could be just a number of school seats they have to create. It's not anything to do with whether the committee thinks it wants a school or it deserves X amount of school seats. It's going to have the same impact on open space, and it's going to have the same impact on transportation and things like that. It's already written into the I forget the document off the top of my head. I'm sure Betty knows it better than I do, but so it's not anything that we as a community board or a committee say, oh, you have to build this now in terms of that particular, in terms of the environmental impact. So I just want to clarify that, that it's all kind of just a bunch of math equations around how many more units you're putting into an area. Unfortunately, Hector, just to, clarify, we all wish, I think there's they don't count projects by a little bit. They count projects as by themselves in total, right? So If you don't meet the standard, if you build a big tower, but it doesn't meet the standard, you don't have to make any school seats. If you build a big project and it hits that trigger, you pulls that, you hit that number, then you have to create school seats. So the next guy right after you might be the one that has to create it, and you might not be the one. So that's how it works.
Thank you, Jesse. Paul, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just want to add to that theme because, Hector, the reason I thought this question is because, like Jesse pointed out, individual projects don't trigger these things, but larger scale projects like this do. And what was interesting with the Penn Station proposal in the GPP was that housing unit number was capped at around 1,800, because then that wouldn't trigger EIS secret on school seats. And so there's a number that they have at the state level. And what's interesting is, since Mike just brought up everything's in Dropbox, I looked in Dropbox to see the comparison. And what's fascinating suddenly to look at is if with current zoning, they're going to add approximately 1,800 new units. Now, guess what? That doesn't trigger a school situation, right? So if we go for the rezoning and that adds 3,500 units, that will trigger the secret laws that require new school seats. Now, if we don't do the rezoning, then it doesn't trigger the school. So this is part of the conversation I want to have about what is the difference between those two, so that we understand the implications. Because if putting a new school in stops this redevelopment, then maybe we don't go for that rezoning and go for the higher number of units, because that will stop the project, because the school will have to be built. And I'm saying school, and Jesse, to clarify, it's school seats, I understand that distinction, but that's where, if we go for this rezoning, it's going to trigger a whole lot of other things in our community, and will that slow the project down and not have you guys have the new housing more quickly? So that's where that trigger came in.
It's just the opposite, Paul. The rezoning option happens quicker, as it turns out, assuming all this. What's that? What?
So you're taking into consideration the addition of the school seats and the rezoning?
Without consideration of that, all right?
Well, that's
No, I know.
It's going to trigger the, just as you pointed out, it's the law. That's
Right.
triggering.
I know that. So, if you strip all those other requirements that might be required, yeah, it's going to happen much quicker. And, Jamar made that clear. We're talking about, 3 to 6 years as opposed to, 5, whatever.
And again, maybe you and I can have this offline conversations. I didn't understand why that difference exists. I mean, we don't have to go into right this second.
No,
but
right.
What I want clarification on is the difference between the rezoning and by right zoning and the implications of
Right,
that. And
right.
that's what I'm
And
not clear on.
Exactly. And in terms of the number of units that, differ, within those options, if you look at, and I think it's in the drop, I hope he gave you those same slides that I have. I happen to have them from before.
I just looked them up. I just looked
did.
at the Dropbox.
So
Yes.
do you see the unit numbers and all that stuff, right? Good.
That's
The
what
charts are there. Good. Okay. So that's there. That's covered.
1,800 units under the
Exactly.
3,500 under the rezoning. 3,500 will trigger a secret impact on school seats. So that,
yes, I know.
that may, if they haven't considered it, if Jamar hasn't considered that may slow down that process. So you saying the rezoning may go faster, but if he's not considering that, it may speed it up. So that
I can tell you this: if a new school has got to be built, or if PS 33 has got to be enlarged, that'll be the next tall tower in the neighborhood. It ain't gonna slow these guys down. Trust me.
Well, good. If we get more school seats, I'm happy.
Yeah, me too.
Do you want to say anything else on this topic? Otherwise, I really want to go to Miguel, but Marty has put his hand up, and we are going to do committee first. So sorry, Miguel, bear with us a few more seconds here. But Betty, did you have anything else you wanted to add on the you're on mute?
Just a quick clarification. The statement was made that the EIS kind of requirements and analysis for schools or infrastructure, why aren't all these other big buildings having to do that sort of thing? And just for, particularly for the newcomers, that if a building is as of right, meaning that they can do it without going to ULURP, without getting to any special permits or anything, then they just do their building. But on a big project, it's very similar to what Paul was saying. You will have to do the EIS, which may trigger impacts that you have to mitigate. So there's a big difference between all these other big buildings that are going on. That's it.
Thank you, Betty. Marty, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you can make it a bit brief because Miguel has been waiting, but please.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad that you guys are all having this conversation.
Sorry, Miguel, we're just going to Marty. We're just finishing up the committee discussion first. I'm so sorry. Just Marty.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, Miguel. I'm a relative newbie to all this. I haven't done the reading, and I'm very glad that the next meeting about this is going to be in September. So I'm making this comment, and I have a question. I hope that we will have the information so that we can have August to enjoy reading all the material that there is on the Dropbox. Since we don't have a meeting in August, clearly our homework is set out for us on this issue. That's right, exactly. That's my comment. My question is, and I hope this is in the documentation, there has been no project like this that I know of where tenants haven't been actually displaced. The statements that were made earlier was that nobody will be displaced, everybody will be in the community. I want to see that timeline. The documentation needs, if that's true, the documentation needs to, month by month, year by year, construction by construction, show that no tenant is going to be knocked off. And if that's not in the documentation, then the documentation's incomplete.
Thank you, Marty. I will say some of that is there. It may need to be more detailed, but at least from an initial perspective, an initial look, it is in there. And if you have subsequent questions, and I'm sure our housing committee colleagues will very much be focused on that issue as well. But thank you for raising, and a good note about August homework. Okay, Miguel. Thank you for your patience.
No, thank you. You know, Hector and Mike said enough. You guys have the biggest concerns. And this is the thing, is the biggest thing that we want at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea is the support of Community Board 4. You guys are in it to protect us, not to hurt us. You guys, many of you are experts at this. We're not. We're just residents that are living in dire straits. But we don't want, because we're living in dire straits, that we don't get what the community understands the need for us only, but to make sure, like the impact statement, it's true. You may have to build a school. You may have to build another police department, another fire department. All of this has to take conversation. And you guys are the ones that need to help us understand what's best for us. We don't want something shoved down our throat and later on regret it. So people may think that we're being displaced. People may think there hasn't been a legitimate vote. All of that is naysayers and residents, as Hector and Mike explained to you guys, pretending that the truthfulness didn't come out on this. But like I keep saying, without Community Board 4 support, I won't feel secure. I need Community Board 4 to secure my heart, my passion for making this move forward. So we need Community Board 4. We need the question that Paul is saying, what Betty is saying, what Kerry, what everybody's talking about, to make sure that Related is not just coming here to build something for us, but really look for the profit that they want. You know, that's not what we want. Their profit, the way we're seeing it, is because the New York City Housing Authority has not invested any money in fixing these buildings. Section 9 exists for nobody. There's no money that's been going into Section 9. So the market rate buildings, from what we're understanding, is to maintain the future of the brand new public housing buildings that are going to be built here. Do we want it? Not all the way, but we need it. We don't have a choice but to accept what's gonna build the future for Fulton Houses in Elliott Chelsea. If it's a for-profit developer, it's on them. But remember, Related is in our community, and Related ain't going nowhere. We didn't get to stop Hudson Yards, so now they're coming to Fulton Houses. I was on the board in the discussion of Hudson Yards. We talked about a new fire department. We talked about a new school. Ain't none of that there. Ain't not even one seat put over there on 34th Street. Come on. So if you're gonna say, like Hector's trying to say, and Mike, that why you so worried about it now, that because it's being put on public housing land, I didn't see people yelling or picketing in front of 50 10th Avenue, so whatever the address is off of Hudson Yards afterwards. I didn't see members of the board crying, where's the seats? Where's the seats? Where's the seats? The ones who took the biggest hit on community seats over there by those residents is Elliott Chelsea. There was no seats at Pierce 33 added. There was no funding that was created for the early childhood for the Hudson Gill. All of this was affected by Hudson Yards. I didn't see no yelling, no screaming by anybody. I didn't see people from Penn South coming and say, this is not the right deal. Where were the Penn South people? And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody here on Penn South, but it's the biggest, loudest mouth people in this community that's against this project are coming from Penn South. And like Hector mentioned, did you guys vote? And I don't know if you did or didn't, for the tear down of McDonald's, the taco place, Christie's, all necessary businesses in this community. That McDonald's was owned by Hispanic for over 40 years. You took his business. The jobs left. You guys didn't think about that. The jobs at Christie's. Where was the Penn South people complaining about that? The jobs in that little taco restaurant and the tennis center. Nobody talked about that. We wasn't even part of the conversation. But no, Marty, you guys want to vote on us, but we're not in the business of Penn South. I'm not saying you, Marty, it's your neighbors from Penn South who are coming here and criticizing us, cursing us out. Look at the YouTube videos. Your Penn South neighbors try to attack me and Hector, okay? It was your neighbors, Marty. I'm telling you because you were waving your hand. It was your next door neighbor, okay, Marty? So I want to hear it. I'm going to repeat it because he has the biggest mouth. Paul Wilcox from Penn South. He's the one that's telling my neighbors that they're going to be kicked to the curb and be sent to the Bronx. I challenge any one of you board members, especially from Penn South, come live at Fulton Houses and see how we live. I'll give you 3 months in the winter and I'll see within the first 2 weeks, you're running back to Penn South. And I'm not saying it to you, Betty or Marty, I'm saying it to Paul because he's the one that has the biggest mouth from Penn South to say that we're living in beautiful conditions. It's all a lie. Related is just trying to grab land here to make a profit. I don't know if they're in it for a profit, but I know we need new homes and we need Community Board 4 to see why we need the new home and what the impact will do on the neighborhood. That's what Paul's talking about. And Paul's 120% correct that we may need a new school. Does it have to be built in this land? If it has to, we'll look for it. And we need the board to negotiate with us, not against us, to make sure that we're all in this as a team together, as one community, not as a separate community. We all live here in Chelsea. I've been here for 60 plus years. And we're living in fear because people are trying to stop from us getting what we deserve, decent quality housing. That's all we're asking for. And what I'm asking personally for the community board to understand the necessary needs at Fulton Houses and then say your word on to make sure while you get the necessary needs, make sure this is taken care of, make sure that's taken care of. You talk about the rezoning. The rezoning is one aspect of this. This developer, as of right, can build, instead of the rezoning, to go with 5 buildings here, that's as of right, he could put it up without any impact from the community board. but we want more because it's the fastest way of getting the housing that we need at Fulton Houses. It's not about anything else. Like Mike said, it can take us up to 12 years if we don't do it by the rezoning. Thank you.
Miguel, thank you so much for your remarks, for your leadership, for your positioning this as a partnership. I think we've had a really robust discussion. I think, frankly, unless there's anyone else here in the room, I think this is a great way to go into the next, phase of all learning about this, spending time with the Dropbox materials. I heard Betty's suggestion that we share some articles that have been written. A lot has been written about this. I just wanted to add, and it's less relevant for Clue in particular, but I know in the what's in the deck, Essence spoke about addressing and mitigating some of the ongoing issues right now. And as much as, especially this committee is looking forward to the land use issues, community, I really expect that Community Board 4 will continue and hopefully increasingly be a voice in ensuring that some of your conditions are rectified immediately. Essence has said that they are willing to do that, and I think we need to be sure we hold them accountable for making whatever improvements they can make, recognizing that any of these plans are still many years away in terms of realizing better housing conditions for the affected residents. Thank you all for such a robust discussion. Carrie was taking notes, and as was I, and there's a lot here. Of course, it's recorded, and look forward to continuing the discussion. I think at this point we wanted to do, this actually went longer than we thought. So much for a short meeting. I think we wanted to give a few quick updates of other things. If anyone has any questions, we can spend more time on it, but it's really more of a popcorn style. I think Carrie's going to give some updates. UK.
Oh, sorry, little hard to hear. Just as we know, for, everybody on the committee and new members, we have some ongoing projects. City of Yes, I think we are still in a comment period and waiting on where we landed with our conversations with that project. That's something that, I'm wondering, like, Jesse, if you're here, if there's some way maybe we can put a number of these in the Dropbox so people can catch up if they need to, and just check out sort of things that are ongoing. Like City of Yes is an environmental, sustainability project that's across the city that in our case impacts some zoning issues. And we had, though we support it, we had a number of questions about like very specific things. So it would be, we can also put links in for the projects. There's an LPC rule change proposal that we've not heard anything back on since we wrote our letter that was objecting to these rule changes. So we're keeping an eye on that in any public session. There's an ongoing request for landmarking the Church of the Lady of Our Guadalupe on West 14th. There's Bayview. Jessica, do you want to give a quick update on Bayview? Bayview is Bayview is a former women's prison on 20th and the West Side Highway that we have proposed. We've participated in writing the request for proposal for somebody to come in and develop it as a 100% affordable housing, mental health facility and community facility, as well as, I feel like I'm missing one thing. I can't believe it.
Housing, mental health, and the kitchen, the gym and pool for the residents, actually.
Yeah, community facility. It's a really wonderful project, and hoping that somebody wants to build it.
But we have not, we have no RFP to comment on yet. We have been told that that the discussion around finding a financial model to support the advanced supportive services that we had suggested would be appropriate or would be a value add to this community. That it does require a new model of reimbursement, and so there have been discussions at the state level to pursue how that would work. And that those discussions have taken longer than was expected. And they're hoping to have an update. They were hoping to have an update in July. It's looking more like August. I would say the good news is that's making its way, hopefully affirmatively, into the RFP so that respondents know that this is more than just intended to be supportive housing, but supportive housing for a particular subset of the population. Of course, we've written many letters. David has been very vocal and supportive of helping us on ensuring that the terracotta is addressed and the issue of replacement and that it be done immediately. I think we've been pressing on that. Hopefully the July or August meeting as it is will be an opportunity to again reiterate our position on that. Yeah.
Who owns that building?
Technically, we've gone back and forth on this. It's New York State, but it has a lease still with the prison system, I think is what we determined.
Department of Corrections.
Yeah,
Still have-
Department of Corrections.
But it is largely sitting vacant with the exception of a security guard who sits.
I thought the Buffett Foundation was gonna buy it at one time.
At one time,
Okay.
it was a, it
It's,
was, right, it was
There's
a
some
women's
foundation.
group, exactly, it was the dog, anyway, this group has spent a lot of time actually. One thing to keep, note on is just in general, I always find that looking through our, we have really robust archives on our website, so you can just Google the address, there or Bayview and see, I know like this committee, Betty and Pamela and others have spent a lot of time and a lot of energy was spent meeting with that group and trying to make something work and it just ultimately can't. So it's been vacant in the interim. Or it was vacant since then.
Yeah, 10 years.
Carrie, other updates?
No updates, just things to, that are coming, new projects for us. I think next year we're gonna have, or next year, in the fall, we're gonna have I think more work on commercial conversions, and how we can create affordable housing out of commercial conversions. Former colored school number 4, which was landmarked, ideas for an RFP for what should be there. That's currently owned by the Department of Sanitation, but they seem very willing to give up ownership for a great idea. I think that's pretty much it. And then just some quick conversation around meetings. We are, we're in this hybrid model. Everybody's learning. Jesse and team have done an amazing job putting this whole thing together. A very quick personal note from me. The reason that I'm not there in person all the time is that I am an immunocompromised person. I had a heart transplant 20 years ago, and so I'm forever immunocompromised. So I think that Jessica has been amazing in showing up on my behalf to be in person and work the, gear. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be able to be on this board. But I think that it would be, sorry, it's like weird for me to say that and then ask everybody for help, but it would be great if we could maybe have sort of a rolling, for those who can show up in person and even want to show up in person, have sort of a rolling, sign up sheet maybe where somebody agrees to get there on time and set up the camera and make sure that everything's working properly and even shut it down. So we're sort of putting that out there to everybody. And I know it's weird for me to say that because I can't come, which I feel terribly about. But hopefully if we get through the next couple of months and COVID really is in our rear view, then I'll be able to meet you all in person. I did meet Betty once on the street with a mask, so.
David and Pamela, but I'll just
And I
add,
met David and Pamela, yeah.
this was my first time doing it without the staff being here. It really turned out not to be a big deal, but I just was having two people just means more coverage. These guys were waiting as I got here. Hopefully, again, must come from Brooklyn today. Hopefully that would be the case, but we just thought if one person who does plan to be here picks one meeting throughout the course of the 11 meetings that we have typically in a year, then we could just be sure that no one's ever waiting at the door and not sure how it goes. So it's not, I really don't think it's a heavy responsibility or ask, and we can like send a sign-in sheet or you can let us know. Because hopefully I'll just be here and it won't be a big deal, but in the case that I'm not, or something happens and Jesse can't be here or the other staff, we just know that it's not an issue. So that's what we're thinking, but not massive responsibility. Pamela, I see your hand and welcome.
Yeah, hi, thank you, and forgive me for being so late to the table. I've been traveling 2,000 miles worth of it and have just returned. It occurred to me that maybe this is for Carrie. Would you be able to attend outdoor meetings? So maybe during the more pleasant months, we could try and schedule stuff outdoors, in-person meetings outdoors.
I'm trying to think of what months those are these days, because it's been pretty darn unpleasant out there.
Yeah, I guess today wouldn't have been a great day for that. But
yes, thank you. That's a great, maybe in the fall, that's a great suggestion. I'm not sure how that works hybrid wise for Jesse, because we do need to be able to have the public, participate in a hybrid fashion. But
Yeah.
I do appreciate that.
Well, it's just a thought I had. On another topic, something that might be timely coming up on our agenda. This has to do in the Chelsea neighborhood, the site where Foragers on 22nd Street and 8th Avenue. There's an application for a new restaurant in that site. And I've put out to my list in the neighborhood, and the immediate response is, oh, good Lord, they want 50 seats outdoors on the sidewalk and another 30 seats in a street location, curb location at that site, 22nd Street and 8th Avenue. There's going to be a lot of pushback on that, and I don't know how Chelsea land use, this goes to the liquor license question.
Yeah.
Goes to that committee, but I think there's going to be enough noise happening that we need to, Chelsea land use might need to have a voice in this as well. I don't know how that works.
Yes,
Anyway, it's just this is brand new stuff. So
Thank you. I would encourage folks to attend the meeting and have as you live and work in Chelsea and have opinions, should attend the BLP meeting to learn more about that.
for sure.
Which is in August, by the way, the
It's on my
only
birthday.
that meets in August. So it's a little harder for people to join, but it would probably be worthwhile for everyone to do so.
It is my birthday. That
Happy
meeting
birthday.
is on my birthday, and I will be in Cape Cod, and there will be a party, and I will excuse myself from the party to attend a stupid meeting.
Now we know how you feel. Thank
You know
you.
what?
Thank you.
What is it, you know?
I was saying, now we know how you feel about if you're gonna excuse yourself from the party, you must feel strongly.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about this.
Yeah. Okay, well, any other last comments? Listeners?
No,
Motion to adjourn?
it's casino stuff, it's all Hell's Kitchen. Just everybody- Motion, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Happy August, everyone.
Thank you all, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night, you guys.